In the 1850s, the built environment had a strict physical ceiling. The tallest stone buildings couldn't safely rise above 10 stories without risking collapse, and a trip between major cities required days of travel by stagecoach. The catalyst to break these limits came from the military. During the Crimean War in 1853, the British Army ran into a lethal problem. Their cannons kept shattering into shards under the explosive force of their own firing. The issue came down to a trade-off in metallurgy. At the time, constructing with metal required a choice. You could have strength or you could have flexibility, but you couldn't have both in a single material. Cast iron was carbon-packed, hard but prone to snapping. Wrought iron was malleable but weak and riddled with slag. To get both, the military needed steel. Microscopically, steel organizes into alternating layers. Cementite handles shear force, while ferrite provides flexibility to absorb impact. The chemistry was understood, but the logistics were difficult. Mixing carbon into molten iron to achieve this exact 1% balance was a delicate process. It took a month to produce just 50 pounds of usable steel. Human progress was effectively stalled by this manufacturing bottleneck. We knew what the material looked like under a microscope, but we had no way to produce it at an industrial scale. Henry Bessemer was a prolific British inventor who took on the challenge of mass-producing steel. He knew that the person who solved the military supply problem would become incredibly wealthy. Bessemer's initial attempts failed. He tried to scoop impurities out of molten iron using custom furnaces, but he couldn't generate enough heat to fully liquefy large vats of the metal. He eventually realized that the solution wasn't adding more fuel to the furnace. To burn off the carbon and impurities, he needed to introduce massive amounts of air. In 1855, Bessemer tested this by forcing a stream of air directly into a bath of molten iron from a pipe inserted at the top. The reaction was violent. The air reacted with the carbon in the vat, creating a stream of sparks and a voluminous white flame, followed by a battery of explosions that burnt part of the building's roof. This reaction generated its own internal heat, melting the iron completely and burning away the carbon. Once the impurities were stripped out, Bessemer could simply add the precise amount of carbon back into the pure liquid. This illustration shows the converter in the act of blowing. The injection of air into the base of the vessel is the specific mechanism that removes the carbon to create pure steel. It took 6 years to perfect the recipe, eventually incorporating additions like manganese to allow the steel to be forged without becoming brittle. Bessemer had successfully scaled a microscopic chemical process into a massive industrial reality, ending the steel shortage. This cheap steel immediately transformed the railroads. Iron rails lasted only 2 years under light use, but steel rails lasted for 18, allowing for a massive expansion of the network. This map shows the resulting growth. In 1840, the United States had roughly 3,300 miles of track. By 1860, that number grew to over 30,000 miles. Travel times plummeted. A trip from New York City to Washington, D.C. shrank from 5 days by stagecoach to a single day by train, a phenomenon known as time-space compression. Steel girders also allowed cities to grow vertically. Combined with the modern elevator, these structures enabled the first skyscrapers to rise past the 10-story limit of stone. These new speeds even influenced modern physics. Albert Einstein used the frame of reference of a speeding train in his thought experiments to understand how observers perceive the world. Einstein postulated that while the speed of light is constant, time itself is not fixed. It slows down as an object moves faster, an insight sparked by a world built around high-speed rail. By scaling the railroad and the skyscraper, Bessemer shifted the baseline for human speed and height, providing the physical evidence used to rethink our understanding of the universe. Today, the infrastructure Bessemer's process made possible is over a century old. Maintaining these aging structures is now a primary focus for modern engineers. Engineers now use standardized frameworks, like the Eurocodes, to assess the safety of these existing steel structures and determine if they require remedial measures. This assessment involves estimating the remaining fatigue life of the metal, calculating how many more years a bridge or building can safely handle the stress of modern traffic. The safety and scale of our current civilization remain anchored to this 19th century breakthrough in hacking the microscopic chemistry of iron.